Don, let me add my thanks for your sponsorship of the Global Innovation Awards. I think it's a super program, and I'm delighted you leaned into it. So having gone through the whole process, what are some of your takeaways from the awards?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Paul. I appreciate that question. I was very struck across all three categories of how resilience was showing up, right? Whether it was looking at giving and creating more resilience for an individual, having an experience where they were availing themselves of an insurance policy, or creating resilience in how we look at taking risk, or businesses, or creating partnerships. So really taking it from trying to solve one specific risk issue to creating something that is scalable. Every single, across all the categories, all of the nominees and the winners, of course, all of their offerings were scalable. All of them were driving resilience in the marketplaces around us.
And we heard people talk about making sure that they weren't a solution in search of a problem. How do you think about that at Lloyd's to make sure you're really focused on customer needs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So when you look at our marketplace as Lloyd's, we are a convening spot, if you will. We have over 100 underwriting businesses and managing agents. We have hundreds of Lloyd's brokers, all sorts of other partnerships, associations, and stakeholders to the marketplace. So when we started the lab 6 years ago, it was very important that they had a say, without making it sound too grandiose, in what sort of solutions were worked on in the lab. So when the applications come in for each of the cohorts, we have 2 cohorts for our accelerator program every year, and I'll talk about the themes in a moment for those. We get about 200 applications for each cohort. Those are then triple vetted at different levels, and ultimately it's triple vetted by members of the marketplace. So it is not us deciding this particular topic is interesting and flavor of the month. We're going to decide that everyone's going to be talking about a cyber product today in the whole cohort. That would be inefficient. What we want is for the market to be introduced to all 200 of these businesses through a very efficient vetting process, make a decision about who they might want to hear from more, and then those businesses come into the lab. They spend 10 weeks. They have an unlimited amount of opportunity to have mentors, all different shapes and sizes, whether they're brokers, underwriters, scientists, economists, mathematicians, etc. And then oftentimes what happens, and I think some of our panelists spoke about that today, what they come into the lab with, and a product idea might end up being a service at the end, or the other way around. So it's always fascinating to see that evolution. But what's most important is we are very focused on making sure that what is coming out of the lab are actually solutions to needs of today. And I think that bears out in the fact that of the over 120, I think now, alumni that we have from the lab, they've raised over $1 billion in capital. 97% of those companies are still operating in the insurance market today, whether as themselves or having been purchased, and they're still operating. And over 85% of them are still in the Lloyd's ecosystem, Lloyd's marketplace. So I think that sort of bears out the thesis that we are attacking and dealing with challenges and finding solutions for them.
That's impressive numbers. And certainly as an outsider focused on innovation, I've been very impressed with what you folks have done, and was interested to see that actually one of the 3 finalists for the Predict and Prevent Award had gone through the lab.
Actually, it was interesting. Remember, he said he went through twice.
And
failed once.
Right.
And I think that's so healthy, because that's what that ecosystem is there for. And the other programs that we have coming out of the lab as well, in that entire innovation space and academy space that we have adjoining it, are about how do you empower all of us to have a bit of a design thinking mentality, to not be scared of innovation, not be scared to innovate, try not to create silos around it, as we spoke about today. So all of that combined, and having the ability to come in, have it not work out, take a step back, come back in and say, help me get it to a better place. It's really important.
Be able to fail.
Yeah.
Do you have some favorites that you'd like to cite that have gone through the lab?
Oh, I love all my babies equally. I do. So I'm always reticent to name my favorites. I do have some, but I just think it's quite incredible, some of the geomapping capabilities that we have, the flood monitoring, predictive capabilities that we have. Cloud downtime, I think, is a fascinating topic. Certainly what we're doing about wildfire, and prediction and preventive services around wildfire. The list goes on, but what I am seeing that I find fascinating, and even in my short few years that I've been at Lloyd's, is that in the beginning, when the companies were coming into the lab, it was about product. Name of the game was create something, get some capacity, and see what happens, right? Now we're seeing much more come out services, right? Because of the power of the data that's held and how you can use that data to map all the rivers of the world and understand flood patterns, if you will. Attach then some parametric coverage mechanisms around that and provide something, or just provide a service. Some others that I think probably get short shrift and never get spoken about are the ones that help out with processing claims and regulatory filings, schedule of values assimilation, those things not maybe at times what we all talk about, but think about the hundreds of thousands of hours of time saved, right? And oftentimes that means faster claim payments for the end client.
Right. Lloyd's is a remarkably global organization, so how does that global perspective shape your approach to innovation?
Yeah, it's a great question. So similarly, as we ourselves continue to evolve, a few years ago we observed that maybe we weren't having an opportunity to look at all types of insurance products that could be coming in, or needs or services from around the world. So we purposely set each cohort from about middle of the pack, so maybe, cohort 8 and then going forward, and we rotated around the world to making sure we were pulling not only ideas and ways of working and knowledge, but also unique insurance needs from different geographies around the world, whether it was Latin America, whether it's Middle East, Africa, Asia, Europe, and we continue to do that rotating. Anyone can apply. It doesn't mean that we're being exclusive to those areas, but we've made partnerships around the world, whether it's with governments, and I could speak about that in a moment, or other insurtech institutes or other insurance institutes to say, let's raise that momentum up so we can bring in some new fresh ideas. We had one cohort several years ago that was pretty heavy on the personal lines. Interestingly, Lloyd's is not necessarily a personal lines marketplace, but there is a bit there, and there's always learning, and most of it tended to be around sensor technology anyway, but that was really coming out of the Latin American market. And just to finish that as well, we have recently signed an MOU with the Dubai Ministry of Economy and Tourism to work with them on co-innovating together. We've done the same thing with the Bermuda Monetary Authority to make sure that we can co-innovate together and really tackle some reinsurance topics around natural catastrophe. I mean, we'll continue to do that around the world. It's a nice way to push out in a soft manner.
So you talk about government. Would you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? Because insurance is a remarkably regulated market, as it should be. So how are you working with regulators? How is regulation shaping the way you're innovating?
We do as much as we can. So those are two sort of more international examples, and I feel maybe a few of those might come up. Again, just a broad MOU to say, let's work together, let's share. It tends to be that we're going to those jurisdictions to run maybe innovation boot camps, help them around design thinking, help some young innovators, young in their career, younger early careers, innovators, or otherwise, enter the world stage a bit. If you shift to the United States, what we tend to do, we spend a lot of time with the state regulators and surplus lines associations as well, the NAIC, and we really respond when they'd like to meet our alumni. We try to do as many panels at different regulatory meetings as we can with our alumni to share on topics around flooding, natural catastrophe, severe convective storm, things where we see a slight protection gap. So some of those innovations, the more that we can work with the regulators to make them comfortable that innovations in this area can be safe and fair and create preventative measures in some ways for a broad community, the better. And I'd love to see some state regulators work with us in their sandboxes to help innovate. And new technologies will come in that way. It's regulation by default lags innovation, but we absolutely need the regulation to make sure that we stay safe as a community.
Right. So that's great. Any final thoughts?
No, I am always inspired when we are able to take a moment as an industry to share together, to remind ourselves of the mission of our industry, and that we all have the levers in this room while we've been here, whether it's through the great technologists that we met on the stage today, investment capability, to knowledge sharing, data going forward, anything to remind ourselves to break down the silos and to keep communicating.
That's great. Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, thank you.